Hi everybody, this is FE11 and Mekkah,
Hi.
and you're watching Chapter 8 of my Fire Emblem 11 Hard 5 0% gross playthrough.
This chapter is going to be very different from Chapter 7 because it's going to have a lot more combat. Chapter 7 had a lot of non-aggressive enemies, and this chapter has a couple groups of really aggressive enemies. So to prepare for that, we're going to do just a little bit of reclassing. Sedgar decided he actually does like taking hits. He's kind of a submissive masochist, I guess, so he's going to go general once again. And we're also revisiting the forge. This time we're going to forge a slightly stronger MC hammer. This is going to be used by Lord instead of Marth, because Marth doesn't quite have the weapon rank for it. This is unfortunate, but we're going to work with it.
If you recall back in Chapter 2, we explained that basically the only advantage Lord had over Barst is his base weapon rank, and this is the one place in the run where it comes in handy, because grinding weapon rank on a unit such as Barst, who only has 6 movement, even as good as he is a tough task, so he doesn't quite make it there in time for this chapter. We also didn't really forge a whole lot onto the hammer. It's a pretty cheap forge, because there's not a whole lot of benefit towards forging a ton of might on the hammer to achieve a one-hit KO on the enemy armor knights, because there aren't a whole lot of armor knights remaining in this game, and there's not a whole lot of point in avoiding a counter, because in the instances where we do need to face an armor knight, we are okay with getting hit, whereas there are far more instances in which we have to like one-hit KO an enemy cavalier or a horseman with a wing spear or rider's bane forge.
So we were actually joined by a couple new characters in this map. Their names are Iron Sword and Steel Sword, and we didn't even move them because their only use in this map is selling their namesakes, and that's about it. They're really not very powerful, so we're probably just going to forget about them.
They start next to some of the armories and vendors in this map, but we're not going to visit them because we have an exclusive contract with our personal armorer who forges us some nice stuff, so they are actually completely useless. I should point out that there is actually an arena on this map that they start out nearby, but on Hard 5 the enemies in the arena are so absurdly strong that sending someone in there is basically guaranteed certain death.
This enemy phase is kind of dangerous because there's a lot of enemies that can attack you, but thankfully we aligned the enemies so that everyone else but Harden is prioritized by the enemies, so that Harden only gets attacked last. And this is important because Harden actually one-hit KOs these enemies with the Horse Slayer, and that doesn't leave any space for other enemies to hit him, otherwise he would have died.
Caeda moves to recruit an Iron Lance, and again, we're going to be selling his namesake soon, so he's not really going to be very useful. On this player phase, this is kind of where the brunt of the action happens. We've eliminated one Cavalier, but we still had 3 remaining, and after recruiting Iron Lance, we still had an enemy Armor Knight and 2 enemy Archers. So here's where we're mustering all of our offense, and it's also where some of our class choices come into play. Wolf is still a Horseman, so that gives him access to the more powerful Steel Bow to finish off a Cavalier from range. And Sedgar, reclassing the General, which has the highest strength base of any class, tied with Draco Knight, can pick up a Steel Lance and have up a triangle advantage to finish off a Cavalier as well.
Yeah, it's worth noting we could have skipped all this fighting just by flying Caeda across the ocean and then killing the boss with her and warping Marth over, but then we would be missing out on our precious Iron Lance, and we want to recruit everyone. This only saves very little turns compared to what you might think, so we're not going to do it. We could also have used a double warp to warp another boss killer plus Marth over, but then we would only save 3 turns with 2 warp uses, and that's just not enough.
It's somewhat remarkable that we're basically moving units to the edge of the movement ranges and combining for just enough power to get the KO on this first group of enemies. And by moving far enough, we end up triggering the movement of that second group of Armor Knights and Archers. But because now, like Marth, Caeda, and Merric are going to be basically cleared to forge on ahead, everybody else can retreat, and we can basically ignore that group of enemies. We do move Sedgar a couple spaces so that he can attract over the group of enemy horsemen and cavaliers. And the reason why we do that is because we wanted to get some extra weapon experience and also some big kill experience for Harden by killing the enemy horseman because he's promoted. But if you are to follow this playthrough later, you would probably realize that he didn't need that kill experience, and in hindsight, this ended up wasting a few seconds and a Rider's Bane use, but I had already planned for this ahead of time. So it's not like it compromised reliability of some strategy later in the game.
Okay, the reason we attack Merric along with Marth and Caeda is because we once again need a bit of chip damage on the boss before Caeda can get the one-hit KO. But normally we would use Wendell, but Wendell's busy being a Dragonite, and Dragonites are not very good against this kind of really defensive Armor Knight boss. So instead we have Merric take up the Excalibur tome once again and do the weakening for us.
Yeah, this is another instance in which when we have Wendell not being a Sage and not using Excalibur, then Merric can still fill in our Excalibur or our magic using needs and do more or less the same thing except at like a worse quality. So that's chapter 8 completed in 5 turns, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.